The Panama Canal, a shortcut that revolutionized global trade, is running on empty. Not empty of ships, empty of water. In 2023, Gatún Lake, the canal's vital freshwater reservoir, dropped to levels not seen in over 70 years. The Panama Canal Authority slashed daily crossings to just 22, potentially cutting cargo capacity by 40%. That's the channel that handles 5% of all world maritime trade gasping for water, and shipping companies are scrambling. But this isn't just a shipping story. It's a clash between a century-old engineering marvel and a rapidly changing climate. The real question, is this a temporary bottleneck, or is the Panama Canal's viability up for renegotiation? Coming up, we'll explore the thirsty heart of this mega-project, why the lake is empty, the ripple effects on global trade, and the controversial gamble to save it. When you picture the Panama Canal, you probably imagine a simple ditch, a sea level cut through the jungle connecting two oceans. But the reality is far more complex and far more fragile. The canal isn't a saltwater passage. It's a colossal, freshwater-powered lock system. The entire operation runs on one thing, Gatún Lake. Every time a ship passes through the original Panamax locks, a staggering 50 million gallons of fresh water are flushed out to sea. That's enough to fill 75 Olympic swimming pools, gone with a single transit. And this isn't just the canal's fuel. Gatún Lake is also the main drinking water source for more than half of Panama's entire population. But this vital lake is in trouble. On January 1st, 2024, its water level was almost 6 feet lower than the year before. It's a single, shrinking resource caught in an impossible tug-of-war between the thirst of global trade and the basic needs of a nation. So, what's actually draining this massive lake? The answer lies in a climate choke point that's only getting tighter. To understand the crisis, you have to look at the sky and then the ground. First, the immediate match that lit the fuse, a powerful El Niño. This cyclical weather pattern shifted Pacific Ocean heat, starving Panama of rainfall. But El Niño alone doesn't explain the severity. It sat on top of a much larger, slower-moving trend, climate change, which is intensifying the extremes of both drought and flood here. The result? The 2023 to 2024 dry spell became the worst in over 70 years. Rainfall wasn't just low, it was 43% lower than average. The entire basin was plunged into a state of severe drought. But the climate cards were stacked against the canal from the land, too. For decades, deforestation across the watershed has stripped away the natural sponge that once held and slowly released rainwater. Without trees, the rain that did fall ran off quickly, instead of recharging Gatún Lake. This double whammy of a supercharged atmosphere and a degraded landscape turned the canal into a literal climate choke point. So the rain stopped falling, but what did that actually look like for the ships trying to squeeze through? The Panama Canal Authority didn't just cut the number of ships, they cut the ships themselves. A draft restriction is the maximum depth a vessel's hull can sit in the water. Here, it was slashed from a normal 50 feet down to just 44.5 feet. That meant every Neo-Panamax container ship had to lighten its load dramatically. And that single change triggered a supply chain earthquake. Daily transits plummeted from the normal 38 down to just 24. Analysts warned that some box ships would have to slash their cargo by 40%, making the journey outright uneconomical. The response was immediate and brutal. Shipping lines abandoned the canal, rerouting thousands of miles around the Suez Canal or hauling containers across the U.S. land bridge. These longer, costlier journeys exposed the terrifying fragility of just-in-time logistics. So, with the lake shrinking and a recent expansion complete, what could the Canal Authority possibly do to fix a problem of this scale? In 2016, a $5.4 billion expansion was hailed as a triumph of engineering. Bigger Neo-Panamax locks meant bigger ships, doubling the canal's capacity. Yet this marvel of technology now feels like a paradox. It allowed for greater global trade, but also deepened the canal's dependence on the very lake that is now vanishing. The new locks do have a secret weapon: water-saving basins. They reclaim 60% of the water used in each transit. Combine this with clever tactics like cross-filling and tandem lockages, and the canal can save up to half its water usage. It's a stunning feat of conservation. But it's not enough to fight the math of a 43% rainfall deficit. An ACP official put it bluntly. We are reaching a point where we have to make new decisions and talk to the world about the future of Panama and the role of the canal. This stark admission isn't just a warning. It's a pivot point leading directly to a much bigger and far more controversial plan. With climate volatility outpacing every technical fix, the Panama Canal Authority has confirmed a drastic long-term plan, damming the Rio Indio to create a massive backup reservoir. It's a tacit acknowledgement, from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on down, that tweaks within the current watershed simply aren't enough to meet future demand. But this new source of water resurrects an old, uncomfortable conflict, pitting global commerce directly against local communities and pristine ecosystems. We would be altering another river's course, potentially displacing families, all to keep megaships moving. It forces a haunting question. Are we just engineering our way out of one crisis and into the next, endlessly delaying a genuine reckoning with shipping's addiction to shortcuts? The Panama Canal's water crisis is a warning. A century-old lifeline is drying up, and the global supply chains we rely on are feeling the strain. Even the greatest engineering can't outrun a changing climate. If you want more stories about the invisible forces shaping our world, hit subscribe. We'll see you in the next deep dive.